On the day my eldest sister and brother argued, I was washing clothes in the backyard. The spring cold was biting, and the well water was bone-chillingly cold. As I scrubbed the stains on a collar, I heard the sound of a shattering teacup from the front hall. Immediately after, my eldest sister's voice raised in anger.
I would rather cut my hair and become a nun than marry into an ordinary family.
My fingertips paused for a moment, then I lowered my head and continued scrubbing. Though the cold water turned my knuckles red and stiff, my mind remained perfectly clear. In this household, our mother passed away early, and our father is absent. My eldest sister and brother run the house. As the second daughter living under someone else's roof, my marriage has always been for the clan elders to discuss according to etiquette, but I also know that for a woman to establish herself, she cannot rely entirely on the manipulation of others. Enduring for now is not accepting my fate. It is keeping to my duty and waiting for the right time to make my own decisions. A woman's security must ultimately be earned by walking the right path herself. At times like this, I always think of the news from the border 3 years ago. Everyone said Liu Xiao died in battle, and nothing was ever heard of him again. My betrothal to him was originally a verbal agreement made by our parents with the elders of the Liu family when they were still alive. Since he is gone, this matter is no longer mentioned by anyone. I have never resented my fate, viewing it simply as a lack of destiny. Life must still move forward. Sure enough, not long after the argument in the front hall subsided, the sound of my brother's footsteps headed this way.
Yuan.
Zhu Mingjiang stood by the edge of the well, looking down at me.
Give me that handkerchief with the embroidered crabapple in your sleeve.
I instinctively pressed my hand against my sleeve. That was a keepsake left to me by my late mother.
Hand it over.
He reached out his hand, leaving absolutely no room for negotiation in his tone. My eldest sister, Zhu Mingju, leaned out from behind him, the corners of her eyes tilting upwards slightly, carrying a hint of impatience.
Yuan, sister will make it up to you later with a bolt of fine Suzhou embroidery.
The corners of her mouth curled up, her smile casual and careless. I recognized this expression the last time she borrowed the jade bracelet left by mother. She spoke in this exact same tone. I never saw that bracelet again. I slowly let go of my hand. Zhu Mingjiang snatched the handkerchief away. He turned and left immediately. Zhu Mingju lagged half a step behind, turning back to wink at me.
Good sister. You have the deftest hands. You can just embroider another one later.
Her embroidered shoes stepped across the blue stone slabs, leaving behind a trail of light footsteps. I looked down at the clothes in the basin, the water reflecting my plain, makeup-free face. I knew very well in my heart that they would take whatever they wanted of mother's keepsakes in this manner. It was useless for me to argue in the moment. Instead, I would only lose my dignity. A woman's respect is never won through arguing. What is rightfully mine will naturally be reclaimed, will naturally be taken back according to the rules. 3 days later, that scholar came to our door. When the servant came to announce him, Zhu Mingju was having her maid apply nail polish for her. The balsam flower juice spilled onto her skirt, spreading a splash of crimson.
What?
She jumped up barefoot.
That scholar actually dared to come to our door.
Was just coming in with a teacup. Hearing this, she paused in her tracks. The servant bowed and added,
That scholar is clutching a plain handkerchief. The corner is embroidered with our household's begonia pattern. He specifically asked for the owner of the handkerchief, saying he is willing to follow the traditional 3 letters and 6 rites, and marry her properly.
Zhu Mingju's gaze suddenly swept over, fixing right on my face. She stared at me for a long time, then suddenly smiled.
Yuan.
She walked over and took my hand, her nails digging unconsciously into the back of my hand.
The handkerchief is yours.
But sister, I lost.
I say it is yours. Then it is yours.
She lowered her voice, and in her eyes, a calculating light flickered.
Yuan. You have always had a quiet temperament. Since this scholar has come to our door with the handkerchief, it can be considered a stroke of fate. Since brother has already agreed, you should just marry him. It is still better than our brother
marrying you off to some distant relative, just to get rid of you in a hurry. I opened my mouth, but before I could say a word, Zhu Mingjiang's voice came from outside the door.
A Jew is right.
With his usual smile on his face. Every time he wants me to do something, he would smile just like this.
Xiao Yuan, you have a stable temperament. Since that scholar recognized your handkerchief, you should just marry him, and it can be considered as helping the family out of a tight spot.
His tone was very gentle, as if they were discussing what to eat today, but I knew it was not a discussion. They were using me as a shield to cover for my eldest sister, completely disregarding my reputation as an unmarried young woman and my future life. It was just that since I was currently living under someone else's roof, going head to head would only bring more suffering. I had already made my plans. Rather than being worn down to nothing in this manner, it was better to use this marriage as an excuse to escape. With the vast world ahead of me, I would surely find a way to stand on my own feet. Rather than staying in this deadlock and suffering grievances, it was better to use this marriage first, to leave the Jew manor. Once I had my own little life, I could slowly plan for the future. I lowered my eyes, looking at the red marks pinched onto the back of my hand. All right. I said. On the day Shendu came to present the betrothal gifts, a fine drizzle was falling from the sky. There were only 2 chests of betrothal gifts, a bolt of blue cloth, a pair of plain silver bangles, and a live wild goose. The goose was flapping its wings inside the cage, letting out clear, bright cries. Ju Mingju hid behind the screen, covering her face with a round fan, and whispered,
He actually brought a goose in accordance with the ancient rites.
There was a hint of surprise in her tone, but she did not say anything more. I stood in the corner of the hall, keeping my head down in silence. Shendu stood in the middle of the hall, his back straight as a rod. He wore a washed-out blue scholar's robe, with the cuffs frayed at the edges, yet his posture was upright and dignified, showing none of the awkwardness of a destitute scholar. When he entered the door, he glanced at me, and his brow twitched imperceptibly. That day, when he was recovering in the ruined temple, he had caught a hazy glimpse of the figure who dropped the handkerchief. She was dressed in flamboyant, luxurious clothes, and he knew at a glance that it was not this quiet girl in plain clothes before him. He bowed to Ju Mingjiang with cupped hands.
I, Shendu, courtesy name Sichuan, am honored by your acceptance. I wish to betroth the second Miss Ju as my wife. The 3 letters and 6 rites will not be neglected. Everything will be done according to the ritual system of the Great Jing.
Ju Mingjiang held his teacup, his gaze sweeping over the 2 chests of betrothal gift. At the corner of his mouth, a faint, barely noticeable smile appeared.
Young Master Shen, although my sister is not very clever, she is still a daughter of the Ju family. These betrothal gifts of yours.
I am poor and humble, and this is already everything I have.
Shendu said, neither humble nor arrogant.
But I can swear to heaven that in this life I will treat her with respect, honor the second Mrs. wishes, and never fail her.
As he said this, he suddenly looked up at me, across the fine drizzle, and the silence of the courtyard. His gaze fell straight onto my face. His expression was solemn, without a trace of frivolity. My heart stirred, and I looked away. On the wedding day, Ju Mingju, for the first time ever, came to my room. She brought a silver hairpin, saying it was a wedding gift for me. The pearl on the tip of the hairpin was yellowed.
This is one I used to wear often.
She slid the hairpin into my hair. She looked me over for a moment.
Now that I've given this to you, consider it a keepsake.
I remained silent. The things mother left her, she could never bear to give to anyone else. This hairpin was most likely just an old item she no longer wanted herself.
A yuan.
She suddenly called my name, her voice softening significantly.
Do you resent me?
The bronze mirror reflected her face, her makeup exquisite, her features as beautiful as a painting. She stood behind me, placing both hands on my shoulders. Whether I resent you or not doesn't really matter. We all choose our own paths. I heard my own voice, flat and devoid of emotion. I only hope that from now on, I can live a peaceful life and make a good life for myself on my own. Ju Mingju fell silent for a moment, then suddenly smiled.
True. Things have already come to this, so what is the use of resentment? We women often have no control over our own lives.
She turned and walked out, her jade ornaments clinking softly. When she reached the doorway, she suddenly stopped.
A yuan. Don't blame me. I had no other choice either.
Her voice grew quieter, as if she were speaking to herself.
The man I marry cannot be too poor. I have to look out for myself.
I looked at myself in the mirror and gently clenched my hands. What others plan for you is never a way to survive. Only the path you walk yourself is. During the first month of our marriage, life was more peaceful than I had expected. Shendu rented a small courtyard in the west of the city. It had 2 main rooms and a kitchen. Though the courtyard was small, it was kept clean and tidy. During the day, he went to the bookstore to copy books, and when he returned in the evening, he always brought some pastries. Sometimes it was a piece of osmanthus cake. Sometimes a few candied plums wrapped in oil paper, which he would press into my hand.
Bought them on the street. Have a taste.
He would say. I would take the pastry and lower my head to take a bite. While he stood there watching me eat, the corners of his mouth curving up slightly. He was a gentleman, always considerate of others. He didn't talk much, but he was very attentive. When I was mending clothes, he would silently trim the oil lamp to make it brighter. Seeing my hands freezing while washing clothes in well water, he would silently fetch hot water and pour it into the basin. When the 2 of us were together, we strictly observed proper etiquette. During the day, the courtyard gate was kept open, and at night, we slept in separate rooms, treating each other with mutual respect, looking after one another as we lived our lives. Once, I asked him, why did you insist on marrying me? You knew back then that the handkerchief wasn't dropped by me. He was writing under the lamp, and at my words, his brush paused. He put down the brush, his voice very flat.
That day in the ruined temple, I was so sick I was on the verge of death, without a single penny on me, and I couldn't even beg for a sip of hot water. Later, I picked up that handkerchief and followed the embroidery mark to the Ju manor. I saw that you were constantly mistreated there, and that your situation was very difficult.
He looked up, gazing at me through the flickering candlelight.
I thought back then, if I could provide a shelter for you, it would fulfill the destiny brought by this handkerchief. The 2 of us looking after each other and living together is surely better than you suffering in the Jew manner. I have only wronged you by arranging our marriage for such a reason.
I lowered my eyes, my hand holding the needle and thread tightening slightly. I had not expected him to see things so clearly, nor had I expected that his proposal was actually out of a desire to help me. The two of us, in the end, were just people trying to make a living in this world. Coming together was merely to keep each other company and seek some stability, living entirely by propriety and duty. On the day Shendu placed third in the imperial examinations, I was hanging laundry in the courtyard. The elderly woman from next door came stumbling in, her face flushed with excitement.
Lady Shen, your husband passed. Third place. He is the Tanhua.
The clothes in my hands slipped to the ground. The sound of firecrackers came from the entrance of the alley, crackling loudly, making my head spin. When Shendu returned, his green robe had been replaced by a bright red official gown. Behind him followed 4 servants, carrying 2 heavy chests. He stood at the courtyard gate, looking at me across the ground covered in firecracker debris.
A Yuan.
He called my name, a relaxed smile in his eyes.
I passed the imperial examination. The Ministry of Personnel has already issued the official document, appointing me as a commentator of the Court of Judicial Review.
I stood there, sincerely happy for him. Congratulations, young Master Shen. Your years of hard study have finally paid off. He walked over, his expression solemn.
From now on, our lives will be stable. You won't have to toil over these trivial chores anymore.
When the news reached the Ju manor, it was evening that same day. Ju Mingju came. She brought her maid and carried 2 bolts of silk, saying she came to offer her congratulations. Her gaze swept around the courtyard, from the old clothes on the clothesline to the firewood stacked by the kitchen door, and finally landed on Shendu's face. Her expression complex.
Yuan, you really are blessed.
She sat down with a beaming smile and took my hand.
When the family arranged this marriage back then, it was indeed the right choice.
Shendu stood to the side, his brow slightly furrowed, only giving a cold, polite bow. I also responded calmly, poured the tea, and sat with her, without saying much. 3 days later, Zhu Mingjiang sent someone to deliver a message, inviting us back to the manor for a banquet, saying it was to celebrate Shendu's success in the examination. When I arrived at the Zhu manor, the tea banquet had already been set up in the hall. Zhu Mingju sat in the lower seat. Seeing us enter, she rose to welcome us, her expression carrying a hint of deliberate closeness. After 3 rounds of tea, Zhu Mingjiang suddenly spoke up. His words, both direct and indirect, hinted that this marriage back then was originally meant for Zhu Mingju. It was only due to a twist of fate that she ended up with me. Every word he spoke was meant to remind Shendu of their past connection over the handkerchief, hoping he would show the Zhu family more favor. Shendu set down his teacup, his expression calm.
You must be joking, brother. The one I asked to marry back then was the second young lady, and the one I married now is also the second miss. Our status as husband and wife is settled. There was no twist of fate. The Zhu family is a Yuan's maiden home, where support is due. I will naturally do my duty.
Just as he finished speaking, a heavy set of footsteps suddenly echoed from outside. A man stood at the doorway. He wore black martial attire, with only a simple wooden hairpin in his hair. He was tall and slender, with broad shoulders and back, exuding a powerful aura of solemn righteousness forged on the battlefield. Zhu Mingjiang's expression changed.
Who are you?
The man ignored him. He looked straight at me, his gaze as deep as the winds and sands of the frontier.
Xiao Yuan.
His voice was low and raspy.
I have returned victorious from the war, only to hear that you have married.
Lu Xiao, my former fiancé. Lu Xiao, whom everyone believed had died on the frontier. He strode over, stood by my side, and swept his gaze across everyone in the room, finally, resting his eyes on Zhu Mingjiang.
Master Zhu, back then, Xiao Yuan and I had a verbal agreement made by our elders. After I went to war, everyone assumed I had died, so the betrothal was never mentioned again. Now that I have returned alive, I only wish to understand the circumstances, and more importantly, to ask about Xiao Yan's own wishes. A matter as grand as marriage should be her own decision to make.
Zhu Mingju's face turned pale, then flushed red. She looked at Lu Xiao, and then at Shendu. One was a young general with a commanding presence, while the other was a newly crowned third-place imperial scholar. Her fingers, clutching her handkerchief, tightened and then relaxed. Zhu Mingjiang was the first to snap out of it.
General Lu.
He squeezed out a smile.
For you to survive such a great disaster is truly wonderful news. It is just that Xiao Yuan is already married. This is against propriety.
The betrothal was merely an old verbal agreement. When your fate was unknown, it had long ceased to be valid.
Lu Xiao didn't even raise his eyelids.
I did not come today to force anyone with an old agreement, nor will I do anything to ruin her reputation. I only want to give Xiao Yuan another choice. Her own wishes are what matter most.
He looked down at me, his tone softening significantly.
Xiao Yuan, I am back. If you are in a difficult position, just tell me. I won't force you into any decision. Everything will be done according to proper etiquette and rules.
His fingers hung at his side, clenching slightly. I could tell that he was actually nervous. I raised my head and looked into his eyes. That year at the border, he came to see me before marching off to war. I handed him the wooden hairpin and said, "I'll wait for you to come back and marry me." He said, "All right." Later, news came saying he had died. Everyone told me that he was dead, but he was back. I opened my mouth. My throat tightened. After a long pause, I finally squeezed out 3 words. "You're alive." He was taken aback, and then he smiled. The smile was fleeting, like a flash of light, glinting off the edge of a blade.
I'm alive. I came back alive to see you.
The banquet that day ended on an unpleasant note. By the time Lu Xiao escorted me back to Shendu's courtyard, the sky was pitch black. He stood at the entrance, looking at the wooden door, and then at the old clothes hanging to dry in the yard. He remained silent for a long time.
The Jew family let you live here.
"It is better than the Jew family's woodshed," I said. He didn't say anything more. From his robe, he took out a jade pendant and pressed it into my hand. The jade felt warm and smooth, engraved with the character Lu.
It was my mother's heirloom.
He said.
Keep it for me for now. No matter what you decide, it is yours to dispose of. I'll wait for you to make up your mind. Everything will be done according to the rules.
Lu Xiao.
Don't push it back.
He held my hand down.
I'll give you time. Think it over carefully. I won't rush you.
After saying this, he turned and strode away. I stood at the doorway, watching his figure disappear into the night. The jade pendant clasped in my palm felt slightly warm. Footsteps sounded behind me. Shendu stood at the doorway of the house, holding a lamp in his hand. The firelight reflected on his face, flickering in the dark.
Is he your former fiancé?
Yes. He fell silent for a moment.
What do you plan to do?
I turned back to look at him. In the shadows of the light, his face looked terribly thin and worn. Under his eyes, there were dark circles. The wedding robe of the third-place scholar was still on his body, but that high-spirited look had faded a great deal. Shendu. I looked at him, my voice very soft. Our marriage was a mistake from the start. For over a month, we have respected each other like guests, abided by the rules of propriety, and looked after one another without any romantic feelings between us. Now that he has returned, I don't want to keep living a lie, nor do I want to hold you back. Let us divorce according to the rights, openly and honestly, so we can both part with dignity. His Adam's apple bobbed. After a long time, he nodded.
I understand. You and I were just getting by together. Now that your old love has returned, it is only right to let you go.
The firelight flickered. His expression was very calm.
Tomorrow, I will prepare the divorce agreement and process it according to the rights of the Great Jing. It is mutual consent, with no property disputes involved. It was I, Shendu, who failed to investigate the truth back then, before coming to propose, wronging you. After the divorce, I will prepare a sum of compensation to send you off with dignity.
I looked at him and gave a solemn bow. Thank you for your understanding, Master Shen. May your future career be smooth, and may you have peace and prosperity. The next morning, Shendu wrote up the divorce agreement. It was made in duplicate, signed and sealed by both parties. We also invited the neighborhood elder and neighbors to bear witness. That very day, it was sent to the county magistrate's office for filing. From then on, each of us was free to marry again, having nothing more to do with each other. Everything was done in accordance with the rules. He indeed prepared a chest of silver and silk, saying it was for my resettlement. I only took the few old clothes I had originally brought with me and pushed the rest back. We were husband and wife once. Neither of us owes the other anything. These things you should keep. You will need them when you enter officialdom in the future. He looked at me with a complex expression in his eyes, but ultimately took them back.
If you face difficulties in the future, you can come to me at any time. Since we know each other, I will certainly help if I can, and all in accordance with the rules.
I nodded, carrying my bundle as I walked out of the small courtyard. I did not go straight to anyone for shelter. Instead, I stayed temporarily at an inn in the west of the city, wanting to sort things out before making further plans. For a woman to establish herself in the world, she must first secure her livelihood and then find peace of mind. At the entrance of the alley, Lu Xiao was waiting there, holding his horse. He looked as if he had kept watch all night. The hem of his robe was damp with morning dew. Seeing me come out, his eyes instantly lit up.
Have you made up your mind?
I have. I stepped forward. Lord Shen and I have divorced amicably in accordance with proper etiquette. From now on, we have no further connection. It is just that I want to settle down first. Before we discuss marriage, the 3 letters and 6 rights, not a single step can be skipped.
As it should be.
He reached out his hand and carefully helped me onto the horse. His palms were lightly calloused, warm, and strong.
However you want to arrange it, I will defer to you. We will follow every custom strictly. I will never let you suffer the slightest grievance.
He mounted the horse, sitting behind me, protectively holding me in his arms, maintaining a respectful distance the entire time. With a flick of the whip, the horse's hooves shattered the morning mist. When Lu Xiao returned to present present the betrothal gifts. He followed the marriage customs for military generals of the Great Jing. He prepared a complete set of betrothal gifts and arrived in accordance with proper etiquette. Chests adorned with red silk were lined up neatly in front of the Jew residence. The gongs, drums, and ceremonial procession all conformed to regulations, neither overstepping boundaries nor looking shabby. The official matchmaker, the presentation of gifts, and the inquiry of names, every step of the process was completed without the slightest negligence. Zhu Mingjiang's eyes narrowed with joy as he smiled, personally welcoming him at the entrance.
General Lu, you are far too polite. We will be family from now on.
The betrothal gifts were prepared according to custom, and they are for the second young mistress.
Lu Xiao dismounted, his tone solemn.
I have already had someone prepare the marriage card. The subsequent 3 letters and 6 rites will all be done according to the rules. It is entirely up to the young lady's wishes. If she has even the slightest displeasure, this marriage will not count.
Zhu Mingjiang's smile froze for a moment, but then his face was covered in smiles again. Zhu Mingju did not come out. The maid said she was feeling unwell and was resting in her room. Lu Xiao did not even ask about her. He walked up to me. Today, he had changed into an indigo brocade robe with a jade belt tied around his waist. The murderous aura from that day had faded from his eyes, revealing a touch of noble elegance instead. He took a white jade hairpin from his robe. The head of the hairpin held a begonia flower.
My mother's keepsake.
He lowered his head and slid the hairpin into my hair.
Before she passed, she said, "This hairpin is only to be passed to the wife Lu marries with proper rites."
His fingers brushed past my ear, sending a wave of tingling warmth through me.
From now on, you are the one my Lu family will marry with proper rites. No one will ever wrong you again.
He took my hand and led me outside. Zhu Mingjiang caught up to us, his face full of smiles.
General Lu, about the birth date document.
Samana will deliver the birth date document in due course.
Lu Xiao did not stop his steps.
But let me make one thing clear first. If anyone dares to wrong my fiancé again in the future, I will certainly, according to the rules, hold them fully accountable.
Zhu Mingjiang's smile completely shattered on his face. That day, Lu Xiao took me to the Lantern Festival. He rented an entire painted pleasure boat on the moat. There were boatmen and maids serving on board. He bought from the roadside food stalls. From the very beginning to the very end.
Open your mouth.
He popped a sugar, roasted chestnut into my mouth.
These are chestnuts from the north. They are sweeter than the ones in the capital.
He then handed over a steaming bowl of mutton soup.
And this.
Osmanthus cake, golden fried cheese, sesame-coated sugar balls. I covered my stomach and shook my head. I can't eat another bite. Only then did he stop. He leaned, lazily, against the ship's railing. The lights on both banks shone as bright as day, reflecting in the river and breaking into a river full of golden light.
Back when I was at the border, I always thought about bringing you to the capital to see the lanterns.
He suddenly spoke.
The border is too cold, and the wind and sand are fierce. There isn't even a decent lantern there.
He turned his head to look at me.
Xiao Yuan, you have suffered these past years.
I looked away, gazing at the reflections of the lights on the river. It was fine. It is all in the past.
Liar.
He took my hand, gently prying my fingers open one by one, and cradling them in his palm.
Your hands are so cold, and you've even had chilblains. The Jew family did not treat you well.
His tone was not a question, but a statement of certainty. I said nothing. He did not ask further either, only holding my hand a little tighter. By the time the pleasure boat docked that day, it was already the 3rd watch of the night. Lu Xiao helped me off the boat. As we walked under the willow trees by the shore, he suddenly stopped.
Xiao Yuan, tomorrow I must enter the palace to audience His Majesty.
He said.
His Majesty wants to ask about the border affairs.
How long will it take?
Hard to say.
He looked down at me, his gaze deep and heavy.
While I am away, you should stay at the general's manor. There are guards at the manor, and the rules are strict. It is safer and more stable than elsewhere.
I haven't married into the family yet.
The manor has a dedicated guest courtyard, separated from the main courtyard. The inner and outer gates are heavily guarded, and propriety is strictly observed.
He interrupted me.
The Jew family has been restless lately. I am afraid they might target you. If you stay there, others won't dare to disturb you at will. The servants and maids of the manor will serve you in the guest courtyard. There will not be the slightest breach of propriety.
He spoke these words casually, but I could hear that he was truly worried. All right.
Also,
he took out a command token from his robe and pressed it into my hand.
This is the command token for the general's manor guards. All the guards in the manor will be at your disposal. If anyone comes to cause trouble, just use the token to have the guards block them. No need to be polite, but remember, abide by the rules in everything. Do not take the law into your own hands. If there are difficulties, just report them to the authorities.
The token felt heavy in my hand, engraved with the words, Lu Manor. If you give the token to me, what will you you use. He let out a soft laugh.
I have no need for it. I know what I'm doing.
The next day, Lu Xiao entered the palace by imperial decree. I moved into the general's estate. The estate was very large, complete with a martial arts training ground. Lu Xiao left me an independent guest courtyard. 2 begonia trees were planted in the yard. Unfortunately, it was not their blooming season, leaving only bare branches. The guest courtyard had its own side gate for entry and exit, separating it from the main courtyard. The servants all went about their duties. On the evening of the day I moved in, someone arrived from the palace, surnamed Li. His surname is Li. He is said to be a close attendant to His Majesty. He requested the second young mistress of the Zhu family to receive the edict. Second Miss Zhu, please receive the imperial decree. I knelt down, unically unfurled the imperial decree, mentioning things like descendant of a loyal and righteous family, and virtuous and gentle, something about being virtuous and kind, but I understood the very last sentence. With a fee of 500 households, I looked up. Eunuch Li had already bent down with a smile to personally help me up.
Please rise, young mistress. His Majesty said that the contributions your grandfather, the old General Zhu, made at the border are well remembered by the imperial court. Back then, the old general sacrificed his life for the country as his only direct descendant. The imperial court will not treat you unfairly.
I stood there, an indescribable feeling welling up in my heart. My grandfather. The year he passed away, I was only 7 years old. The last time he held me, the last words he said to me were, Ayuan, if there is no one to protect you in the future, then you must protect yourself. Walk the righteous path and follow the rules, so you can stand tall. My fingertips trembled slightly as I recalled what he had entrusted to Mother. Before his death, a hollow silver hairpin. Hidden inside the hairpin was a map of the official mines in the Western Territory. It was state property that grandfather had discovered during his inspection and had prepared to report to the imperial court. All these years, Zhu Mingjiang had kept it tightly in his grasp. He had searched for a long time, but could never find the mechanism to open the hidden map. Yet grandfather himself had already, long ago, paved a righteous path for me. Once the imperial decree was issued, the capital was shaken. Zhu Mingjiang arrived that very afternoon, wearing a broad smile and bringing over a dozen chests.
These are all Mother's dowry.
He said, rubbing his hands together, with a tone that was warmer than ever before.
Your brother was foolish in the past and wronged you. In the future, whatever you want, just speak up.
Zhu Mingju followed behind him.
Ayuan, your sister did not treat you well in the past. It was my fault.
She walked over, slipped a jade bracelet off her wrist, and stuffed it into my hand.
This is a small token from your sister. If you still recognize me as your sister, please accept it.
I looked down at the bracelet. It was a vibrant, dripping green, clearly an extraordinary piece at first glance, but I remembered it. It was the birthday gift Zhu Mingjiang had given her last year. She had flaunted it before me back then with great pride.
Brother said, this bracelet is worth 3,000 taels.
I placed the bracelet back into her hand. Sister's bracelet is too precious. I dare not accept it. Zhu Mingju's smile froze.
Ayuan,
this is your sister's goodwill. I will accept. I looked at her, but there is no need for gifts. Our mother's dowry. Please have brother deliver it tomorrow. Those are my things, and I will take them with me. They should have been returned to their rightful owner anyway, according to clan rules and etiquette. Zhu Mingjiang's smile shattered as well. When Zhu Mingju came to see me, it was late at night. She was wearing a plain white nightgown. Her hair was loose, and she wore no makeup. It was the first time I had ever seen her looking so plain. She stood at the doorway and did not come in. Her expression carried a hint of weary despondency. After returning home during the day, she had caught Zhu Mingjiang sorting through gold and silver and secretly inquiring about the defenses of the general's estate. He was clearly trying to use her name to scheme for the rewards in my hands. At that moment, she suddenly realized that after all these years of fighting and snatching, in the end, she was nothing more than a pawn for her brother to curry favor with the powerful.
Ayuan, I have some things I want to say to you.
I put down the book in my hand and waited for her to speak.
Actually, I've always known that I was in the wrong back then.
She looked up, and in her eyes was a look I had never seen before. It wasn't resentment, nor was it jealousy. It was a very calm sort of reminiscence.
That year in the ruined temple, I dropped my handkerchief on a whim. I just thought a poor scholar picking up a young lady's handkerchief and actually daring to come propose marriage was incredibly novel.
The corners of her mouth curved slightly, carrying a touch of self-deprecation.
But then he passed the imperial exam with high honors. I watched your life get better and better, and I felt uncomfortable in my heart. I always felt this should have been mine. I came to find you, wanting to use that old connection, to have Shendu look after the Zhu family more, and to bring some honor to myself as well.
She lowered her head, fiddling with her cuffs.
I do regret it. But not because I didn't marry him. I regret dropping that handkerchief that day, dragging you into this for no reason.
She raised her head and looked at me.
Ayuan, do you think I'm very foolish? Instead of living a good life, I just had to scheme and plot, only to end up not even knowing whose pawn I was.
I did not answer. She smiled faintly.
Actually, I've envied you since we were children. You don't fight or make a scene, but you always know what you're doing. That year I pushed you into the pond. You didn't say a single word after climbing out. You just went back to your room and changed your clothes. If it had been me, I would have definitely gone crying to brother to complain.
She paused.
But you didn't. You never complained. I thought you were weak, but only later did I realize that you simply didn't care about our petty squabbles. You have your own mind and your own proper path.
She turned and walked out. Reaching the courtyard gate, she suddenly stopped.
Yuan, I'm sorry.
When she said those 3 words, she did not look back. Her plain white figure vanished into the night like a wisp of smoke dispersed by the wind. I sat under the lamp for a long time. I suddenly remembered many years ago when we were playing together in the backyard. She pushed me into the pond. I climbed out by myself, my clothes soaking wet. She stood on the bank, smiling triumphantly. I wanted to cry at first, but seeing her smile, I forced my tears back. Not because I was strong, but because I knew crying was useless. A woman's security is never gained by crying. It is by walking the right path, keeping to one's duty, and earning it step by step. On the day Shendu came to find me, it was raining. He stood at the door, holding a green bamboo umbrella, the hem of his robe stained with mud. He is now serving as a case reviewer in the Court of State Ceremonial, handling the files of merchant fraud cases. Having caught wind of the matter, he immediately took a detour to come over.
Yuan,
He spoke, his voice slightly hoarse.
something has happened to Zhu Mingjiang.
What is it?
He bribed the steward of the general's mansion, colluded with foreign merchants, forged documents, and embezzled the ancestral property left by your maternal grandfather. He even used General Lu's name to swindle people outside.
Shendu looked up, his expression solemn.
I have already reported this to the chief minister of the Court of State Ceremonial. The office is about to issue an official document for a joint investigation. I was afraid you might be implicated without knowing, so I came to inform you first, so you can make preparations early. He came twice under the pretext of visiting you, and promised the steward 500 taels of silver before he found out where the official seal was kept.
I was stunned for a moment. For someone like Zhu Mingjiang, he is someone who forgets moral principles for profit. It is not surprising that he would do such a thing. Forging official documents and committing fraud under a false name are serious crimes. Blinded by greed, he is capable of anything. Thank you for bringing the news. I turned to walk inside. Shendu suddenly spoke.
What do you plan to do?
Handle it officially. I looked back at him. The official seal concerns imperial regulations. There is no room for personal feelings. However it should be investigated is how it will be investigated. Everything will follow the procedures of the Court of Judicial Review. I will fully cooperate with the authorities to provide evidence, and will never interfere with the case. He looked at me, a flash of approval in his eyes.
It is good that you think this way. I also came because I was afraid you might be swayed by sibling affection and end up dragged down by him.
Rest assured, Master Shen. I know what is important. He nodded, opened his umbrella, and turned to walk into the rain. I stood under the corridor, watching his back disappear into the curtain of rain. I knew in my heart that he made this trip out of regard for our past acquaintance, just to give me a warning, so that I wouldn't be implicated by Zhu Mingjiang. When I rushed to the front hall, the officers from the Court of Judicial Review had already arrived. Lieutenant Pei was leading his men to cooperate with the officers. In taking a roll call of the household staff, he recognized me, came forward, cupped his hands, and said,
Miss Zhu, regarding the matter of the official seal, the officers have already opened a case to investigate. It was the household manager who was bribed to steal and hide the seal box. The person has already been apprehended. Both the suspect and the evidence will be fully transferred to the Court of Judicial Review. The General's mansion is only cooperating with the investigation and will not be involved in private interrogation.
It was Zhu Mingjiang who masterminded this, I said. Lieutenant Pei nodded.
The officers have already gone to the Zhu residence with a warrant to arrest him. This matter involves the forgery of official documents and will be tried publicly by the Court of Judicial Review later.
I stood in the front hall of the general's mansion, watching the servants forced to kneel all over the courtyard, and a sudden chill washed over my heart. What Zhu Mingjiang wanted to steal was not just the official seal. He also coveted the map left behind by my maternal grandfather, the map of the mineral veins. That map was originally a blueprint of the imperial government's mines. If it fell into his hands, it would bring about a catastrophic disaster. With Lu Xiao away, this burden is mine alone to bear. Lieutenant Pei, I spoke up when they searched Zhu Mingjiang's residence. Please be sure to tell the officers to look out for something. My grandfather left behind a hollow silver hairpin. It is an important relic. It is most likely hidden in a secret compartment in his study. Please tell the officers that if they find it, they must keep it safe and return it. It is a piece of evidence, and also my grandfather's relic. Lieutenant Pei looked up at me, his expression turning solemn.
I understand. I will inform the officers right away.
When Zhu Mingjiang was apprehended, he was sipping tea in the reception hall. When the officers from the Court of Judicial Review rushed in with the warrant, he hadn't even set down his teacup.
What do you think you are doing? I am an imperial merchant. I am General Lu's brother-in-law.
He screamed at the top of his lungs.
On what authority do you arrest me?
From a secret compartment in his study, the officers uncovered several letters, as well as that silver hairpin I had been searching for so long. The letters were written to him by a foreign merchant. It was clearly written on them: "The replica of the official seal has been received, and the payment has been settled. When the goods cross the border next month, I hope you will have the documents ready on time." The evidence was rock solid. Even as Zhu Mingjiang was pinned to the ground, he was still struggling.
It wasn't me. Someone is framing me. It is Zhu Yuan. It is her. She holds a grudge against me for marrying her off to the Shen family back then. She is taking revenge on me.
I stood outside the crowd, looking through the bustling heads, and met his gaze. His eyes were filled with hatred. I looked back at him too, without flinching. "Brother," I called out to him, my voice very soft. "The silver hairpin left by grandfather. I have already found it. Forging official documents and embezzling family property are serious crimes. When you did this, did you never think of the consequences? The law is absolute. It is not something anyone can just trample on. As for how you will be sentenced, the court will make its own fair judgment." His pupils suddenly contracted.
There is something hidden inside that silver hairpin. You knew that too.
His face turned completely pale. Then he smiled, a very ugly smile.
So you knew everything all along.
He stopped struggling as the officers escorted him out of the Zhu residence. Zhu Mingju chased after them to the entrance. She didn't cry, but just stood there, watching her brother's retreating figure. Her lips trembled slightly, but in the end, she said nothing. I walked over. "Sister." She looked up at me, her eyes completely hollow. "When brother was arranging my marriage back then, did you ever say a single word on my behalf?" Her lips trembled, unable to utter a single word. "No," I answered for her. "You only asked me for a handkerchief." Her eyes welled with tears. "So now, I cannot say anything on your behalf either. The law is absolute. Whoever makes a mistake must bear the consequences. If you truly repent, then walk your future path well." I turned and left. A soft sigh came from behind me, though I knew not if it was hers or just the wind. When Lu Xiao returned, it was already dusk. He stepped over the threshold, covered in dust from the road, without even untying his cloak.
Are you hurt?
I shook my head. He looked me over carefully, from head to toe. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief, leaning back against the chair. Most of the tension left his body.
Deputy General Pei ran into me at the gate just now and explained everything that happened. You did very well. You stayed calm in the face of trouble and considered the bigger picture. You handled everything strictly by the book, without overstepping in the slightest.
I only found the silver hairpin to keep my grandfather's heirloom from falling into the wrong hands.
It wasn't just the silver hairpin.
He looked up at me.
You held leverage over Zhu Mingjiang, yet you didn't lash out on the spot. By following the legal process the entire time, you gave others no room to gossip, nor did you leave yourself open to accusations of personal bias. Zhu Mingju is your sister after all. You didn't drive her to a dead end either. You only held Zhu Mingjiang accountable for his crimes.
He paused, a trace of a smile appearing in his eyes.
Zhu Xiaowan, how did I not realize before that you act so prudently, upholding justice and knowing propriety?
I learned it from them. After suffering so many setbacks, naturally, I came to understand. Things obtained through crooked paths cannot be kept in the end. He gently took my hand, without saying a word. Outside the window, the twilight grew deeper. The lanterns under the corridor lit up one by one. "Lu Xiao," I suddenly spoke. "That mineral vein map was actually a government mine, discovered by my grandfather during his border patrols back then. It should have belonged to the imperial court in the first place. Keeping it in my hands is too much of a hot potato. I'm afraid I won't be able to protect it, and I'm also afraid someone else will harbor evil intentions because of it. My grandfather's dying wish was also to hand this map over to the imperial court, to replenish the national treasury." He fell silent for a moment.
Then hand it over to the imperial court.
"What?"
Hand it over. Present it to the Ministry of Revenue with your own hands, explaining that it is a state asset left behind by your grandfather. The Imperial Court, remembering your grandfather's loyalty and appreciating your deep sense of righteousness, will naturally grant you the corresponding rewards and protection according to the regulations. With the Imperial Court's regulations protecting you in the future, no one will dare to touch you.
"What about you?"
I will block whatever comes from behind for you.
His tone was casual, as if he were speaking of an insignificant, trivial matter. I looked at him. "Why are you so good to me?" He thought for a moment.
Perhaps I owed you in my past life, and I'm here to repay the debt in this life.
When he said this, there was a clear smile in his eyes, but I always felt that beneath that smile, something else was hidden. A few days later, I personally delivered the mineral vein map to the Ministry of Revenue. The imperial decree was soon issued, praising me for my great righteousness. As the descendant of a loyal subject, I was bestowed the title of County Mistress of Tangning, with a fief of 1,000 households, and granted the official patent of knighthood. All my treatments were to be carried out according to regulations. The verdict from the Court of Judicial Review followed shortly after. Zhu Mingjiang had forged official documents, colluded with foreign merchants, and embezzled ancestral property. For his multiple crimes, he was sentenced to exile of 3 3,000 miles, with all his illegal gains confiscated. Of the Zhu family's estate, the portion belonging to my mother's dowry was returned to me in full. The rest of the ancestral property was disposed of according to the law. The verdict was publicly posted on the city gates, visible to everyone, fair and clear. On the day Lu Xiao was poisoned, I had just returned from outside the palace after receiving my patent of knighthood. I tucked the patent scroll into my sleeve, thinking of going back to show it to Lu Xiao. Before the carriage even reached the gates of the general's estate, it ran into the messenger sent by Lieutenant Pei. The man's face was deathly pale, and his voice was trembling.
My lady, something has happened to the general.
When I jumped down from the carriage, Lu Xiao was surrounded by a group of imperial physicians. He lay on the couch, his face pale, his eyes closed. There was a thin layer of sweat on his forehead, and his brow was slightly furrowed, as if he were sleeping fitfully. Guarding by the couch were the medical matrons and his personal maids, attending to his every need. Everything is done according to the rules. What happened? I grabbed a servant boy waiting nearby, my voice tight. The servant's eyes were red, his voice halting.
At the welcome tea banquet hosted by the families of the capital's military officers, the general drank a few cups of tea and felt unwell upon returning. The imperial physician said the tea had been tampered with.
Lieutenant Pei pulled me aside and lowered his voice.
The tea was indeed tampered with. The imperial physician said the poison is not lethal, but it severely damages one's vitality. They have already stabilized him with acupuncture and medicine. This matter has been immediately reported to the Court of Judicial Review to open a case, and a thorough investigation is underway. The medical records and physical evidence have all been sealed and sent for testing. No one in the manor would dare to do this.
He was perfectly fine, so why did he go to the banquet?
This welcome tea banquet was jointly organized by the families of the border guarding generals in the capital. They are all familiar colleagues, so the general could not decline.
I stood there, composing myself. I recalled attending a poetry gathering of noble ladies a few days ago, where I heard someone mention a noble lady in the capital surnamed Zhou. Her father is a deputy general in the imperial court, and she has always been spoiled and arrogant. She had previously expressed her feelings to Lu Xiao. After being tactfully rejected, she had been harboring a grudge ever since. The investigation will follow the standard procedures of the Court of Judicial Review. If there is any need for cooperation, the general's manor will assist fully. I tightly gripped the imperial mandate scroll in my sleeve. Do not show any leniency. With my imperial mandate from the court, there is no need for hesitation. But remember, only cooperate with the investigation, and never take the law into our own hands to investigate or question anyone.
My lady, Vice General Zhou's household is not to be trifled with.
Before the law, everyone is equal, I said. If anything goes wrong, I will take the blame. Lieutenant Pei looked at my expression, said nothing more, and turned to leave. I stayed by Lu Xiao's bedside for 3 days and 3 nights. Batches of imperial physicians came and went, and bowl after bowl of medicine was administered. His complexion gradually began to improve, but he had not yet woken up. His lips were slightly dry, and his brow was furrowed, as if he were trapped in a nightmare from which he could not escape. The maids and medical women took turns keeping watch, while I simply stayed by his side, ensuring everything was done according to the doctor's orders. I held his hand. At the web of his thumb, there were thick calluses, worn down from years of holding a saber. Right now, this hand was warm but weak, unable to even clasp my fingers. You said you would marry me, I whispered. You cannot break your promise. He did not respond. Back then at the border, what did you say to me before you went to battle? Do you still remember? You said you would come back alive to marry me. You came back from the battlefield alive. You cannot fall here. His fingertips twitched slightly. I froze. His lips parted, uttering an extremely soft, raspy murmur.
Xiao Yuan.
I am here. I leaned down, my voice trembling. Wake up, Lu Xiao. He struggled to open his eyes, his gaze unfocused. It took a long moment before he finally focused on my face. He parted his lips, his voice barely audible.
Don't cry.
I'm not crying. I desperately held back my tears. He smiled, a very faint smile. Then, he slowly raised his hand and wiped the corner of my eye. As his fingertips brushed my cheek, he murmured,
Liar.
After saying those words, his hand fell back down. I froze there, and my tears finally spilled over. So I was crying after all, without even realizing it myself. By the day Lu Xiao could sit up against the headboard to drink his medicine, the Court of State, ceremonial, had also fully investigated the case and publicly announced the verdict. The poisoner was a servant bribed by a noble lady of the Zhou family. Driven by unrequited love, Lady Zhou harbored malicious intent and single-handedly orchestrated the poisoning. As the mastermind, she was sentenced to exile according to the law. Her father, for failing to maintain strict military discipline and failing to discipline his family, was demoted and and had his salary docked. A few months ago, Ju Mingju had used a poetry gathering for noble ladies as an excuse to cozy up to Lady Zhou. Lady Zhou often asked her about the daily affairs of the general's manor. In a slip of the tongue, Ju Mingju mentioned the arrangements for the welcome banquet, unaware of Lady Zhou's malicious intentions. This was deemed a negligent disclosure of information. According to the law, she was sentenced to 6 months of labor at the charity house as a warning to others. The official verdict was posted publicly, making it known to the entire city. The law was executed without the slightest bias. On the day of the sentencing, I went to see Ju Mingju. Ju Mingju sat in the corner of the cell, her plain white clothes stained with some dust. Hearing the footsteps, she looked up through the bars. She stared at me for a long time, and then she smiled. It was a very bitter smile.
I was foolish,
she said.
I thought she was just making small talk with me. I didn't expect her to have such malicious intent. It was my loose tongue that almost harmed General Liu, and harmed myself as well.
She toyed with her sleeves, the smile on her lips seeming somewhat dazed.
Actually, I was just unwilling to accept it. You never fight for anything. So why do you have what I don't? I calculated and schemed, only to end up trapping myself.
I took out a copy of the case file from my sleeve and placed it on the ground. The Zhou woman masterminded the poisoning and is severely punished according to the law. You leaked information through your slip of the tongue, and the law has also handed down your punishment. I looked at her, my voice very flat. Ju Mingju, you have spent your whole life blaming others, but in the end, it was your own obsession that pushed you into the abyss. You chose this path yourself, and you must bear the consequences yourself. If you can truly repent and live a good life after you get out, it won't be too late. She looked at the document, and tears suddenly rolled down her face. She reached out to take it, but her fingers trembled so violently that she couldn't pick it up after several attempts. She suddenly gave up and pulled her hand back and covered her face.
I know.
Her voice was muffled, seeping through her fingers.
That year at the ruined temple, I shouldn't have dropped that handkerchief. If I hadn't dropped it, Shendu wouldn't have come to propose. If he hadn't come to propose, you wouldn't have married him. If you hadn't married him, General Liu wouldn't have returned. If I didn't have all this resentment, I wouldn't have done those things later.
She lowered her hands, her face covered in tears.
But there is no medicine for regret in this world, is there?
I looked at her face, remembering many years ago, her smile when she pushed me into the pond. Yes, there isn't, but the road ahead is still long. To walk the right path, it is never too late. I turned to leave. Her voice came from behind me, very, very soft.
Yuan, if I had been a little nicer to you back then, could we have been sisters?
My footsteps paused. I did not look back. Perhaps on the day Lu Xiao could finally get out of bed and walk, I accompanied him to sunbathe in the courtyard. He had lost a lot of weight, his cheekbones protruding, leaning back in the wicker chair. In his hand, he was still holding a bowl of medicine, yet he absolutely refused to drink it.
It is bitter.
Good medicine tastes bitter.
Then give me a candied fruit.
Into his mouth, I stuffed a candied date. He chewed it, his brow smoothing out. Be good, and drink your medicine.
The day you investigated the case, you did everything strictly by the book, without causing yourself the slightest bit of trouble.
His tone was calm.
But what if the Court of Judicial Review couldn't find anything? What did you plan to do?
There are still imperial titles, and there is still the law. I looked at him. I wouldn't do something as foolish as taking matters into my own hands. Justice lives in the hearts of the people. Those who do evil will get their retribution sooner or later. He reached out and flicked my forehead.
From now on, leave the life-risking matters to me.
His tone suddenly became very serious.
You only need to do one thing.
What is it?
Live well. Safe, sound, and smooth. Keep walking on your righteous path.
The day of the grain rain was my wedding day. Before dawn, I was dragged out of bed by the wedding coordinator, threading my face, applying makeup, and styling my hair. Layer after layer of wedding robes weighed down on me. By the time the phoenix crown was finally placed on my head, I could barely breathe. The wedding coordinator murmured auspicious words in my ear, but I didn't take in a single word. Before getting married, I had submitted a petition to the Court of Judicial Review, explaining that Ju Mingju's offense was accidental rather than malicious. Furthermore, since being imprisoned, she had shown signs of repentance and had caused no actual harm. I requested the authorities to graciously allow her out for half a day to attend the ceremony. After reviewing it, according to the law, the Court of Judicial Review approved the permit. The firecrackers crackled and banged. Supported by others, I stepped over the threshold, walked along the corridor, and headed toward the bridal sedan chair at the entrance of the alley. Lu Xiao sat high on his horse, wearing a bright red wedding robe. He turned his head to look over. Across the shower of petals drifting through the air, his gaze pierced through all the clamor and fell upon my face. I suddenly remembered that year at the frontier when I handed him the wooden hairpin and said with a blush, "I'll wait for you to come back and marry me." He said yes. Later, he lost touch, and I never heard from him. And then, I married into the Shen family. I thought I would never wait for him again in this lifetime. But he came back. I lowered my head, just about to bend down and step through the sedan curtain, when from behind me, a soft call suddenly came.
Yuan.
I turned my head. Ju Mingju was standing on the street corner, wearing plain clothes, with 2 supervising older maids standing behind her. She looked at me from afar, her lips moving slightly. Across the clamor of the street, I could not hear what she was saying, but I saw the shape of her mouth.
I'm sorry.
I nodded my head and stepped into the bridal sedan. The curtain fell, and the sound of firecrackers rang out again. The gongs and drums deafened the sky. I sat inside the swaying bridal sedan. I took the white jade begonia hairpin that Lu Xiao had given me out of my sleeve, held in the palm. The body of the hairpin felt warm and smooth, and the flower in my palm, blooming quietly. I looked down at it and suddenly smiled. From marrying into the Shen family to an amicable divorce, from divorcing to marrying again, from a despised young woman to a county magistrate with a fief of 1,000 households. Along this journey of mine, every step was difficult, but every step, after all, was taken by myself. No one can live my life for me. In this world, the strongest backbone is not supported by others, but earned by oneself. Walk the right path and guard your true heart. Only then can life be lived with peace and stability. I slid the hairpin back into my hair. The curtain of the sedan chair was lifted a corner by the wind. Light fell upon my wedding gown, as red as fire. The sedan chair moved forward steadily. The road ahead is long, and it is all filled with the light of spring.